The French Revolution, the uprising that changed the world, 1789 to 1799. When bread becomes blood, fade in, thunder cracks over a starving village. A mother clutches her child as aristocrats feast behind castle walls. Outside, the people stir, not with swords, but with fire in their hearts. What do you do when a loaf of bread costs your entire week's wages? When your king drowns in diamonds while your children starve in alleys? You revolt. But the French Revolution wasn't just a rebellion. It was the birth of modern politics, the destruction of a 1,000-year monarchy, and the dawn of popular sovereignty. It tore down cathedrals, rewrote human rights, and inspired the collapse of monarchies from Haiti to Moscow. Between 1789 and 1799, France transformed from kingdom to republic to empire, bathing itself in blood, liberty, and fire. Yet for every statue of liberty it inspired, it left a guillotine's shadow. In this documentary, we uncover the true story of how a hungry nation overthrew its king, executed its god, and rewrote the world. This is not just a history of politics. This is the revolution of the mind, the mob, and the musket. France before the storm, privilege and poverty. In the 18th century, France glittered on the outside, but rotted from within. The nation's ancient three-estate system divided 28 million people into grossly unequal classes. First estate, clergy, less than 1% of the population. Second estate, nobility, 2%. Third estate, everyone else, peasants, urban workers, the bourgeoisie, 97% of the population. While the privileged owned nearly half of all land and paid little to no taxes, the third estate carried the economic burden of an empire. Add to this the worst harvests in decades, and bread became unaffordable for the average worker, consuming up to 80% of their wages. By 1788, France was bankrupt, thanks to Louis XVI's opulent spending and the massive debt racked up by supporting the American Revolution. Nearly half of the state's budget went to interest payments alone. With public anger rising and no political outlet available, the king was forced to do something unprecedented: summon the Estates General, a representative assembly not called since 1614. But instead of calming tensions, it lit the match. The intellectual fuel, the Enlightenment. The revolution was born not only from poverty, but from philosophy. The Age of Enlightenment had cracked the old world open. Writers like Voltaire, who ridiculed the church and monarchy, Rousseau, who proclaimed that sovereignty lies with the people, and Montesquieu, who argued for the separation of powers, gave revolutionaries the ideological tools they needed to justify rebellion. These radical ideas were not confined to bookshelves. They spread through salons, cafes, and secret societies and took on real-world meaning when American revolutionaries defeated Britain in 1783. Many French officers returned from that war, most notably the Marquis de Lafayette, carrying ideas of liberty and constitutionalism. The people no longer just wanted food, they wanted freedom. From protest to revolution, 1789 to 1792. The Estates General and the National Assembly. In May 1789, delegates from all three estates met at Versailles, but immediately conflict erupted. The Third Estate, which represented nearly the entire country, demanded voting by head, not by estate. When denied, they broke away and declared themselves the National Assembly, the true voice of the French people. Just days later, they were locked out of their meeting room. Undeterred, they gathered at an indoor tennis court and swore an oath. "We will not disband until France has a constitution." The tennis court oath marked the beginning of the end for absolute monarchy. The Bastille falls. On July 14, 1789, thousands of Parisians stormed the Bastille, a symbol of royal tyranny. They seized gunpowder, freed prisoners, and beheaded the governor. It wasn't just a military act. It was a psychological earthquake. The king's authority shattered. Across the countryside, peasants burned manor houses, looted grain stores, and destroyed tax records in what became known as the Great Fear. The rights of man. In August, the Assembly abolished feudalism and declared the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. All men are born free, sovereignty resides in the nation, and law must be equal for all. However, women, slaves, and the poor were excluded. By 1791, a constitution established a constitutional monarchy, but Louis XVI had already tried to flee the country, caught in Varennes, disguised as a servant. The people were done with kings, terror and triumph, 1792 to 1794. The Republic is born. In April 1792, France declared war on Austria and Prussia, fearing foreign intervention. As panic spread, Parisians stormed prisons and massacred 1,200 inmates they feared were royalist conspirators. The monarchy was formally abolished on September 21, 1792, and the First French Republic was born. The king is executed. On January 21, 1793, Louis XVI was guillotined for treason. His wife, Marie Antoinette, followed later that year. Other European powers joined the fight, and France faced civil war, foreign invasions, and economic collapse. Reign of Terror. The revolutionary government handed control to the Committee of Public Safety, led by Maximilien Robespierre. Robespierre believed in virtue through terror. The law of suspects allowed the arrest of anyone vaguely counter-revolutionary. Over 17,000 were executed during the Reign of Terror, including Georges Danton, once Robespierre's ally, Olympe de Gouges, who had demanded women's rights. Religious holidays were abolished. Churches became temples of reason. Citizens lived in fear of midnight knocks and morning executions, but the blade would turn on its master. Fall of the radicals and rise of a general, 1794 to 1799. Thermidorian reaction. On July 27, 1794, Robespierre was arrested and guillotined the next day. The terror ended overnight. A new constitution in 1795 created the Directory, a five-man executive that proved weak, corrupt, and heavily reliant on the military to suppress uprisings from both royalists and Jacobins. France was exhausted, broke, and directionless. Napoleon Bonaparte. Coup of 18 Brumaire on November 9, 1799, 18 Brumaire in the revolutionary calendar. Napoleon staged a coup, overthrew the Directory, and established the consulate, naming himself First Consul. Just 10 years after storming the Bastille for liberty, France now welcomed a military dictator. The revolution had devoured itself, but its ideas would survive him. The fire that still burns. Fade to slow montage. Burning Bastille, the guillotine, a waving tricolor flag, modern protests in Paris. The French Revolution wasn't just a historical event. It was a cosmic shift, a moment when ordinary people rose from the shadows of palaces and said, "We are the nation." It replaced kings with constitutions, priests with principles, and fear with freedom, only to become its own executioner. As Georges Danton said before the blade fell, "The revolution devours its children." But it also gave birth to the modern world, where the right to vote, to protest, to speak, and to dream are seen not as privileges, but as birthrights. And that fire, it still burns. In every square where crowds chant for justice, in every country where tyrants fall, in every voice that dares to say, "No more." The French Revolution is over, but the idea, it lives on.